Okay, welcome class to the auxiliary PowerPoint for the Deviance chapter. I've chose to do a little presentation on the sociology of marijuana versus alcohol, and in particular, whenever you're analyzing anything in a sociological context, one of the things you want to do is to um, split it up into categories so that it's more easy to focus on. And we're going to look at these two substances through the lens of deviance, crime, morality, and then health. And each one of those categories will reveal a different sociological slant on these two substances and the history behind them. So the way this is going to be set up then is we're going to talk about the history of both substances just briefly, and then get into some health issues with regard to these two substances, and how they might affect some sociological determinants of health, and then talk about the crime aspect, and that's really the deviance part, and then the morality, and we're going to talk about the religious context to these two substances as well. But we're starting out with alcohol first. I'm just going to click onto this and hopefully it will load up and we can take a look at this website. Um, and it's a good one because what we're going to do here is we're going to look at the history of alcohol in the United States, and hopefully it will load up. It's a slider. So if you go back, it's really cool. I like these things. You go back and you see, I mean, they know March 21st, 1621, alcohol was brought to America. Prior to that, you need to realize that alcohol was not indigenous to this continent. North America was devoid of alcohol prior to then, which has sociological ramifications, especially when you talk about the American Indians and their lack of a alcohol dehydrogenase, which is an enzyme that people from European descent in North Africa have to metabolize alcohol more efficiently, and it gives them an advantage. That's why American Indians have such a huge alcoholism rate. So it's pertinent. Everything is. It's kind of fascinating. The Act of 1721 was the first legislation devised to legislate the use of alcohol. And in 1814 there was an alcohol tax. It's the first time we taxed alcohol. So you can see that it took us a little while before we figured out that these, and a lot of this was based on morality, taxing alcohol. There's a lot of puritanical religious elements to looking at alcohol as being a moral issue. I'm sorry, I missed the actual. This is the broad tax. The 1802 was the whiskey tax. And what have I missed down here? Let's see. Oh, the Temperance Society, which was a society generally really based on women that had a hard time. They wanted to temper the use of alcohol because they were a lot of their husbands were losing them to overuse of alcohol. So you can see it was a problem, and that was also religiously motivated as well on morals. Then we go to the new alcohol tax. We talked about that. And then there's a broader tax on liquor in 1862. That's, you might recognize that date as close to the Civil War. And it went to fund a lot of the war efforts as well, which is interesting in and of itself. First cocktail was invented January 1st, 1850. Which is appropriate, I suppose. 1906, we had labeling laws. We think of labeling laws as something now. And then Prohibition, that was a big crunch on it. We actually prohibited all the use of alcohol in the United States, and that's when you get the things like speakeasies and things like that, underground alcohol, and we figured out that didn't work. And Prohibition lasted for 13 years, then it was over. And then drinking and driving. Over .8 is a national law. So that's just kind of a brief background on alcohol, the history of it. Alcohol has massive health determinants. Excessive alcohol use can lead to the development of chronic diseases, serious problems including high blood pressure, heart disease, stroke, liver disease, digestive problems, cancer of the breast, mouth, throat, esophagus really gets rubbed raw, liver and colon, learning and memory problems, mental health issues, and depression and anxiety. One of the biggest issues our nation faces right now is depression and anxiety. Social problems, loss of productivity is huge. It's almost immeasurable. Family problems and unemployment, alcohol dependence and alcoholism. 88% of all domestic violence in ERs, people that come into ERs, there's always alcohol involved. You can talk to any nurse or doctor um, or even law enforcement agent, and they will tell you that that's a huge variable in that. The CDC was my source for that. Arrests made in alcohol involved in other violent incidents known to law enforcement. Arrests made, that's the total arrests made right here. Alcohol involved. You can see that during the arrests made that over half of the arrests involve alcohol use. And then these are alcohol involved instances in other violent crimes. It's total here, and so that would include non-violent crimes, such as DUIs and things like that. British Journal, prisoners and alcohol abuse. I think we'll click on that and take a look at that real quick. British Journal of Science is a great resource for you guys for your term papers, by the way. Again, you can see in Britain, violent crimes, alcohol use at the offense is, look at that. I mean, these two right here, I don't know why all the other stuff's highlighting, but 382,000 crimes and in the year of 2004. And then of those, of the violent crimes, 207,000 involved alcohol. We can look at the other statistics. It's fascinating. It's a good little chart there. There's a massive social stigma, but there's also, it's fascinating, with alcohol. There's a stigma, but then it varies amongst groups, amongst subcultures, even countercultures to some degree, religious groups, things like that. The stigma is, it varies huge. The gradient for that is huge, based on cultural norms. So, and we know what a stigma is, and I have a little YouTube clip on that too. Take a look at that. Sorry, these things take a while to load here. Probably going to be an ad. I'm going to skip that one. I have no idea what that's for. Take a look at this. Pretty powerful scene here in flight. Gotta love Denzel. This is good for stigma. This is a little bit of a spoiler alert here, by the way. Gotta love Denzel. You could watch the rest of that if you want to see the end of that. We don't have time to watch all that for this. But let's get to marijuana. Fascinating, the juxtaposition between marijuana and alcohol. Although they do have similar history, if you look, you know, again, taxes on marijuana effectively outlawed. The fascinating thing about marijuana really is that it was a counterculture. It got applied to counterculture, right or wrong. And it really doesn't have a basis to be applied to counterculture except for in a political context. So it really was politicized as a counterculture type of thing. And Reefer Madness, and there's a clip on this from Reefer Madness. You guys can watch that on your own. But really was a counterculture kind of a deal. It's fascinating. You can look at that. There are health problems to marijuana. I mean, it's true that there's health problems. And a lot of people like to talk, especially in my lecture classes, they always say, well, what about compared to smoking? And yeah, I mean, there is health problems to both. It's just undeniable. You can read all these and take a look at that. You know, Whether there's more or less, that's where the debate lies, but still there is health problems involved, and it's undeniable. This is an interesting thing. The drug scheduling for marijuana take a look at this. This is what they, base their scheduling on. This is the federal scheduling for the laws for marijuana, and it's scheduled, and I think we'll get to it, but it's scheduled as a Schedule 1 drug, which is fascinating. You can see the climb of arrests, so you can see the deviance. I mean, we've really classified marijuana as a deviant substance, and all political realms too. This is not a red and blue issue. You have the first President Bush climbed with him. Clinton massively climbed with Clinton, and this is a war on drugs effect here. And then, of course, with W, it rose to 827,000 arrests. I mean, it's incredible, these years of the amount of arrests, and the disparity of the ethnicity arrests are even more astonishing. If you look at African Americans in particular targeted for marijuana use. So here's the schedule. Look at these things that's in here with MDMA, ecstasy, marijuana, LSD, GHB, which is hypnotic, and then heroin. So, I'll let you figure out where you would put marijuana in on this one, and does it belong in there or not. And then, what's interesting is if we do a comparative analysis of alcohol and marijuana, you can use theory to explain why we view these substances in different ways in the United States and in California, because states pretty much, this is where a lot of our consternation has been, the states kind of come up with their own interpretation of the laws, as we do in the United States. States get to interpret their laws that are relative to their needs and their experiences with certain things. If you examine these two things, you could use the chapter to boost validity of your examination in terms of terms. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to argument. You can explore that, although for your essays I do want it to be a persuasive essay. And you could frame all this with these categories that I have. All right, that is that, and I just wanted to go over that briefly with you guys. It's massively brief, but hope you enjoyed that.